Welcome to today's episode of the Psychology of Black Womanhood podcast, the space where research is meeting the real world. This episode shines a light on the important issue that's been impacting Black girl creators on TikTok and other social media platforms. Despite their massive influence and creative contributions, Black women often don't receive the recognition or opportunities to monetize their work in social media spaces. Instead, they're continuously co-opted, with their content being repurposed by others while they fade into the feed. Today, we're talking with Dr. Zari Taylor about how this cycle of erasure happens and what needs to change to ensure Black girl creators are truly seen, valued, and compensated for the culture they shape. Dr. Taylor is a critical cultural studies scholar interested in the interplay of digital and popular culture. Specifically, she explores the relationship between race, beauty, social and traditional media, celebrity culture, and creator economy. Dr. Taylor is currently a faculty fellow and assistant professor at New York University and is affiliated with the Center for Faculty Advancement and the Alliance for Public Interest Technology. We celebrate social media as a space that's really democratizing, where anyone can access or create information. However, you, through your work, have pointed out there's a racial divide. There's your paper, It Shouldn't Be Funny, But You Can't Help But Laugh, Black Twitter, Tweet Like the 1600s, and Black Humor Online. Why is that paper so important for helping us understand what's happening when we look at various social media spaces, and particularly tweeting and Twitter?
Yeah, so that paper came from my own experience with Twitter. It was in a media class on Black Twitter with Meredith Clark, and learning that I could talk about Twitter or what I was seeing on my feed with my friends in like a academic way and trying to make sense of it, because we had learned research on sort of digital divide, which was Black people are not using the internet or they don't have access to the internet differently than their peers. But then this sort of other side that I was seeing, where there's a lot of jokes, there's a lot, like obviously police brutality, social justice, community building. And so that was kind of what I was interested in. And in particular, looking at that hashtag where everyone's making jokes about slavery, which is something that's not necessarily funny, but we're able to joke and laugh in the way that Black people joke and laugh with each other online. And then kind of what was happening as other racial groups tried to involve themselves in the conversation or tried to make similar jokes or take their own history and make jokes out of it, and kind of the boundaries that Black people were making about this shouldn't be funny, but you can't help but laugh at it, but we're the only ones who are allowed to laugh at it, and how that was sort of the replication or extension of Black humor, sort of the comedic history, where we're talking about catharsis, we're talking about things that are serious, such as racism, such as police brutality, but making light of it. And that's something that is kind of unique to African American history. And so that was kind of just playing out in an online space.
So your other paper that sort of shifts how Black girls specifically are erased from TikTok. In fact, the article that you wrote about, it was specifically asking, where are all the Black girls on TikTok? What led you to raising that question?
So my dissertation focused on cultural appropriation on TikTok, and specifically the main case study was The Renegade, which was a dance created by Janae Harmon in 2019, and she was not able to get the attention around it. Instead, it went to Charlie D'Amelio and other white creators who are now millionaires, now have starring on Broadway, have, music careers, going on tour. Not to say that Jalea would have wanted those things, but, it's always nice to have that kind of attention and the economic capital that was coming to TikTok creators. Mm-hmm. And so I tried to understand, because I'm a cultural studies scholar, like, how do we get to this moment? What other kind of histories are at play in this situation? Because it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. So my approach was looking firstly through beauty. So understanding that because a lot of the money being made by influencers being brought to the app was by beauty brands, fashion brands, there's a level of worth for Black women that are not going to compare to white women. And that's kind of evident in the deals that, all of those creators were able to make. But secondly, looking at how cultural appropriation has happened in America kind of historically, and then looking at how it plays out. And so cultural appropriation has happened in mainstream pop culture in ways that we understand. There is blackface, there's fashion designers pulling from sort of minority communities. But there's also this emerging, I guess, overlap in digital spaces, what's been called digital blackface, what's been called blackfishing. And in my project, I oriented as technominstrelsy, which is how technology allows minority identities to be adopted in ways that are so kind of abstracted, you can't really tell what's going on. And so that was the broader multi-year project that I had been working on. And so the question after for myself was, okay, well, then where do all the Black girls go? Because my newsfeed is full of Black women. So obviously we're trying to form some type of community. And the special issue was on children. So because the creators of The Renegade and creators of other very popular viral dances were young women, they weren't adults. I was wondering, where could they find community? How are they, congregating themselves, trying to build a type of niche community on the platform? But obviously the results of that study, we learned that it was much more complicated because of the use of Black girl. So I think Black girls and women are trying to build community on the platform, but it's a community that isn't based solely on age. It's more so this intergenerational community that's formed.
You brought up the idea of digital blackfishing and how that's sort of central to understanding who gets privilege and who doesn't get privilege. How is this affecting Black girls?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two levels to it. I think in general, the idea that you could sign on to a social media platform and you're scrolling on your feed and then suddenly you see a girl who has super tan skin. She's wearing earrings. She has long nails. She has box braids. And that could be a way of, on the one hand, you may be struggling with your own conception of beauty or self-esteem, et cetera, but you're seeing these same styles be glamorized by others and not kind of feeling the same because, again, Black women are not the standard within a Eurocentric, idea of what is beautiful. So I think there's a dimension of trying to find yourself, trying to accept yourself within a landscape that is not friendly to you or not accepting of you, and then seeing other women go off and do it. But I think on another level, on the creator aspect of it, there's a lot of money to be made on TikTok. It's not available to everyone and it's not easy, but getting to that sort of second level in the dissertation, I try to make a distinction between the creators, which is maybe you have content that goes viral, you get a couple of brand deals, maybe you work with TikTok Shop, et cetera, versus influencers who are the ones who are going off in other arenas of entertainment. You have an agent, you're able to make this into a career. So I think seeing people on social media kind of put on Blackness as a costume and then just sort of take it off when they get another brand deal or when it sort of fits whatever advertisement they need to make, that can be very frustrating because there is really just a lack of, I think, a space in general for girlhood for adolescents. But I think adding that extra level of the adultification of Black girls in particular, that they constantly face this inability to be children. There's a lot of conflicting interests that you're seeing on social media. And then when it comes to the specific cases of creating your own content and then seeing it being taken or another person's doing it and getting paid for it while you're not, that can be also a source of frustration.
I know you bring up the idea of visibility and how those notions for Black girls or everyone who's using TikTok really impacts their behavior. Specifically, you point out the fact that TikTokers are constantly trying to figure out how the algorithm works and how to police a platform to increase your visibility or have your popularity grow. What factors around these issues are unique to Black girls' experiences?
Well, I think there's a way, like all of the sort of literature on algorithmic folk theories or algorithmic imaginaries, all of the sort of concepts that scholars have come up with, there's ways that people learn technology. And that's something I'm very interested in general, that if you tag FYP or For You page, that will maybe boost you. If you tag search creator content insights or any of these kind of gamified notions that will help to create engagement, doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. So there's, for example, another paper that I've been working on that looks at hashtag Black Girl Pilates versus Pilates. So if you type in Pilates on TikTok looking for Pilates content, we did the first 30 videos, they were all white. There was maybe 2 non-white women, but they weren't Black.
Right.
Versus if you put Black girl Pilates, all of the content that you're going to get is from Black women. So even if you're searching for content on Pilates, you're not finding yourself, even though those women in Black girl Pilates have tagged Pilates, they've tagged FYP, they've tagged the same things. They just also tagged these other racialized hashtags that signal that they're Black, signal that they're Black girls, signal that they're Black women, but they're not visible in the search engine, or they're not given a priority in the search engine. Right. With women who are in the Pilates search results hadn't tagged the hashtag at all. So it's, how did they get here when they didn't use the tools that we're told we're supposed to use to create engagement? And so that feels racial, even if it's not necessarily racial. And there's no way for you to get a real answer from it, because TikTok is not going to explain why your video is not at the top result. And so there's, again, this reification of whiteness, even in this space, even in something as trivial, let's say, as a search for a Pilates home workout video or a Pilates instructor in your area. So that visibility that people are constantly trying to get, it seems as if it's only given to white people. Even if you're posting the same thing, the people who are going to be found more or given more opportunities or given more followers are going to be the white creators. So it would seem, and so it has kind of been historically. So it's a difficult thing where you're trying to understand the algorithm, but there's also this idea that the algorithm works against you, or that the algorithm is, this evil, like, conspiracy monster that is trying to inflict oppression or inflict harm to Black women, but there is no answer that we could get from it. So it tends to just be like a catch-22 situation where you have to make the best of what you have. And I think the findings from the Black Girl TikTok article were along those lines of, you just have to create content for, or try your best to practice agency, to create content and community for people who look like you, have the same experiences as you, et cetera.
Yeah, that shifts great into my next question, which was about what you found with these girls are creating their own community. And specifically, you called a hashtag Black Girl TikTok as a home space. And I love that concept. Can you share with us what you found about this?
Yeah, so the article didn't include ethnography, which I think the next sort of phrase of that would be, I would love that. But I think looking at the type of content that you see under Black Girl TikTok, like if you type it in, it's not the only hashtag that people are using. So there was a lot of hair videos or reviews of, does the Dyson hair dryer work on my texture hair, or Black Girl luxury, like all of these other sub-niche communities, but sub-niche communities of women who like to go to very nice restaurants. There's a kind of class performance that you're seeing in like the Black Girl luxury videos of unboxing designer items. There's women just making normal content, talking about going to the gynecologist, people talking about motherhood. And obviously these are not Black girls in the sense of being adolescent, but Black women in general, as well as Black girls, kind of posting content about their life. But it's all a similar experience. And the same thing happened with Black Girl Pilates, where there's a different kind of conversation happening in those videos where users are talking about being the only Black person in a class, or not really having any Black instructors and not really knowing what that's like. So there's a way that if you look at those videos, or if you assume perhaps that by tagging your videos or searching for those videos, you're going to stumble on this kind of discourse, that it would reflect the experience that you have, and that you can train the algorithm or train your For You page to show you more videos of that nature, because technically that is how TikTok's algorithm works. The more you're exposed to certain kinds of content, the more it feeds that content back to you. There are, of course, other factors and that they've shared, some factors that we may never know, because obviously they don't want to make all of it public. But the assumption, again, is that by creating this kind of content, engaging with this content, it'll get fed back to you. And so ideally, you could construct a For You page or your own kind of world that is reflexive of your beliefs, that values you, etc.
You found some important generational difference as well, namely the users that were dominating the spaces that were celebrating and support Black and women and using the hashtags on TikTok were predominantly women, Black women versus Black girls or teens. Why do you think this occurred?
Well, I think there's a different amount of Black women using the app in general. But I also think there's a way that Black girl has been taken up in popular spaces where it doesn't just talk about age. So the idea of Black girls rock being a thing, no one is checking like ID, for example, for those types of events. But then you also have Black Girls Code, which was created intentionally for Black teenagers. So it's just kind of the way that girl has been used. I think if the paper had more space, or if it was a book, let's say, it would talk about how girl is used in African American vernacular in ways where if I said girl to one of my friends, we're both not children, obviously, but there's just a familiarity that we have with the term. And so again, I think the flexibility of the method, critical technocultural discourse analysis, on the one hand, I think the study could have been looked at as a failure because you're not finding children or teenagers in this demographic. But on the other hand, there's these other nuanced sort of historical factors that are important in understanding that the community, it's not even a level of intentional invisibility by Black women. It's just that this is just what we use. Even myself, I use Black girl TikTok, or I relate to Black girl TikTok, even if I'm not myself a girl. And it's just because of these other factors. And broadly, I think looking at African Americans historically in the United States, the creation of community by Black women for both Black men and Black children they're kind of the leaders of these spaces, the leaders in the community, whether it was hair salons, whether it's churches, whether it's just opening up your space, opening up your porch, having dinner, having lunch, bringing people over. They are the sort of the matriarchs of that space. And so I think there's a level of respect that everyone is okay, let's say, with Black women tagging Black women TikTok, but also Black girl TikTok, because even if the Black girls, the younger girls, may not have the same experiences, they're not mothers, they maybe don't know how to do their hair, they can learn a video of a Black woman doing cornrows and say, oh, like, I like this style. Maybe I'll show my mom that this is what I like. Or this product seems like it could work for me, or I like how the music she's listening to, or just this type of aspirational lifestyle that Black women can have by sharing their experiences. Because again, if they were to just go off of a generic hair care, and I put generic in quotes, they would get most likely an experience that's not theirs. So I think creating that content in their own image allows Black women to continue this legacy of teaching and sort of imprinting their experience to people who are coming up behind them.
I'm glad you talked about Black women in terms of taking a leadership role and the applied activism. You kind of touch on that when you talk about the concept of digital Black feminism as a tool for Black girls to uncover and challenge their invisibility. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so digital Black feminism is a framework that was forwarded by Catherine Knight Steele. And in her book, she talks about looking at how Black women are operating in online spaces, not as a corrective to white women or to Black men, but kind of looking at it for its own sake and not coming at it with like a deficit model kind of approach where you're saying, well, they don't have this, so they have to create that. I take a piece from that because I don't think I'm fully within the framework, because I do think there is this kind of corrective that occurs where Black women tagging Pilates and Black girl Pilates, like there's a tension between both of those things where you're acknowledging the white kind of mainstream, but also signaling this kind of niche identity. But in her original framing, it's just sort of appreciating Black women's digital content for itself and linking it to these larger histories, specifically the Black hair salon, and looking at how Black women are able to create spaces and have salon talk, which is just, again, looking at their own experience in online spaces. In the book, she references mostly blogs, which was, its own time, very, I think, a legacy or a precursor, let's say, to the influencing that we're seeing today. But Black women being able to write and engage in comments about their own experience is very similar to creating a video, looking at comments, et cetera, that we're kind of seeing in my work, which is mainly focused on TikTok. So I think it is very generative as a foundational framework to understanding how Black women are creating content for themselves or just engaging in online spaces that has the tenets of Black feminism as well, where we're if you're thinking of Patricia Hill Collins, the way that Black women are able to acknowledge their experience, acknowledge the oppressions that they're building, but also have this epistemology and how that impacts not only their offline lives, but how they operate in online spaces as well.
I'm glad you brought up blogs because I think that highlights how far we've moved. And blogs really weren't that long ago if we really look at the time history, but I think it speaks to how social media is moving so fast. What are Black girls now carving out for themselves in these spaces?
I mean, I think they have to continue to carve out space. I'm hoping to continue talking with Black women about why they use racialized hashtags, because it's not something that you're taught. Like when you open an app, they say, well, this is how you use a hashtag. And if you'd like to signal race, you also need to add Black to whatever hashtag you're using. So who is the original source that told us this is how you use the internet? I think Twitter is a perfect, I don't say parent, but like parent for something, if you can consider Black TikTok to be a sort of niche community, because with Twitter, Black people use of the hashtag is what made the hashtag what it is. And that's something that we all know for a fact. So I think that practice and that use of technological affordances has just migrated to another platform and to numerous platforms very rapidly. As you were saying, everything's happened so quickly, but I think there's knowledge that's built even in those transitions. And the fact that it's not only Black girls who are using these affordances, but also Black women who have also may not have grown up with technology, but are, moving with the rest of us. So I'd love to talk with Black women about how they're using it. But I do have my own kind of cynicisms or reservations about whether or not it is possible to wholly have a community that's inaccessible or exclusive for ourselves. I think the double-edged sword of the internet is that posting content, maybe to find another Black woman in another state, in another country, you're also being exposed to other non-Black people who can take that content for themselves. I think in general, there's a way that because technology again has moved so rapidly, there's all of these features, and it's not something that is explained to us as all of these changes are being made. It's very difficult for people to, I think, have a media literacy to understand how things are working. For example, there's a controversial thing that happened on TikTok in October where Black women were posting their beauty routines, and the automated search suggestion on TikTok would say ghetto makeup. And there was a lot of uproar, obviously, about it because, like, what do you mean? Like, where did that come from? However, in my data collection that I did, I grabbed, I want to say 50 videos from it. It offers a more nuanced kind of conversation. So on the one hand, you have this controversial thing that's happening. Why is TikTok suggesting ghetto makeup when a Black girl is doing her makeup? And the assumption is that TikTok is being racist against Black women. But at the same time, there's no, again, one person at TikTok's headquarters saying we need to push this agenda towards Black women. Maybe there is, but there's no way for us to know that. But that's the assumption. A deeper dive into the videos, you find that there was one creator who had broken a foundation bottle and had put the remaining product in a cup and then use the bottle to apply the makeup to her face, which if it's just us, we can acknowledge that's a little ghetto. And people in the comments were saying, buy another bottle. This is ghetto. Like, don't do this. And so she decided to create my ghetto makeup series, which would be, it's okay if your bottle broke. You can still use products because Fenty is expensive. And we want to support Rihanna, but I'm not going to spend another $40, $50 on foundation when I have this remaining stuff here. If your brush is broken or you don't have this fancy brush that everyone's talking about, you can use this cheaper one from like the dollar store, the drugstore, et cetera. So she was trying to create this relatable content. And my belief, I have yet to really go deeper in it, but is that if you feed that to the algorithm, that's what it brings back to you. And so that's how we get that, end result of the labeling of ghetto makeup for Black women. The fact that it was darker skinned women who were getting this label is problematic. But
Right.
Again, there's all of these different factors in how are they using facial recognition? How are they being trained on skin tone? There's all of these questions that I don't think we'll have. And I think that's just an example of how racism kind of flares up within technological systems with no kind of source or no answer. But there's also Black women, even in that, who are using these things in unironic ways and in empowering ways. And that's kind of the trend that we see throughout time with how Black women are able to make the best of what they have within their circumstance.
So what about you as a Black woman and a Black woman researcher? What's next for you? What are you looking at in this realm?
I'm hoping to continue in this sort of frame. I'm hoping to extend my dissertation, looking at both the beauty capital side and how beauty kind of operates in pop culture, but then also looking at the technological side, continuing to pursue not only TikTok specifically, but broader social media, how Black people are orienting themselves to these platforms. I'm grateful to have a postdoc right now, so I'm able to focus on those research and a lot of the other sort of articles and projects that I've sort of had in the works as well.
That was Dr. Zari Taylor sharing her research examining the cycle of erasure Black girl creators experience in social media spaces. Dr. Taylor's research, community programs, and social media handles are all available for you to access on our website. Just visit this episode's podcast page at www.psychologyofblackwomanhood.com. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Psychology of Black Womanhood podcast. You know, our audience keeps growing, and that's thanks to you. Your love and support means the world to us. We're grateful that you're sharing the podcast with your family and friends, helping us amplify these important conversations. You can continue to support us by following us on Instagram, Facebook, or Threads. And don't forget to check out our website to keep up with all of our activities and future episodes. See you next time.